Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us for this fifth and final short webinar on incapability dismissals. My name is Gary Smith. I'm a partner at Knockhold's Solicitors in the employment team. And in this final session, we're going to look at running a performance improvement plan and what you need to do in terms of so you've gathered your evidence, you've set your standards, you know why the employee is not at the standard you want. Now, what do we do about it? So firstly, having gathered your evidence and pulled everything together, which we covered in the fourth of these 5 webinars, you would meet with the employee and explain your concerns, provide your evidence that their performance is not up to standard, and consider their explanations and their reasons. There may be some very good reasons. They may be unwell. There may be something going on in their personal life that you are unaware of that is taking their eye off the ball. We had one case where the employee's wife was suffering from cancer and we didn't know. So fine, of course, you understand, you don't proceed with a performance improvement plan. You look at how you can support that employee through that issue. But sometimes, and indeed often, it is simply a case that there is no good reason or explanation for their poor performance, in which case you need to set out what you're doing in a PIP, a performance improvement plan. Now, best practice is then to set out the standards they are currently achieving. It is rare for employees to be rubbish at everything. They will often have certain elements that they're good at, and you want to recognize those because you don't want those to drop off whilst they're working on the things they're not so good at. So you want to make sure you recognize and keep those standards high. You then want to set out the issues that you have, the standards they're not achieving, and so far as possible, identify the measurable steps they can take. Now, there is an emphasis always on it's got to be objective, and yes, as much as you can, you want objective evidence, you want material steps that you can see and measure, but sometimes that isn't possible. Sometimes there has to be a degree of subjectivity in it, and that is perfectly fine. You need to set out the standard you want them to reach and also look at interim steps. It is rare for an employee to go from poor performing to being the best performing employee, but you can look at setting steps in place. So for example, if they had a salesperson with a target of £100, but they're only achieving 50, well, look, they're not performing, but they're not going to go from 50 to 100 like that with a click of the fingers. You will need to put in place perhaps 60 next month, 70 the month after, 80 the month after that. Those sorts of stepping stones that you can follow through. You then want to look at setting out some review periods. Now, typically, you would look at meeting informally with the employee on a weekly basis. I mean, that could be as little as poking your head around the office door and saying, is everything okay? Yes, it is. Great, super. Or it could be something more in depth if some problems have arisen. Then you would also look then on a more formal basis to meet with the employee, perhaps monthly, to work out have they achieved the interim steps or the standards that you have set. You've got to consider how long the PIP should last for. Now, each case is different, but generally speaking, our advice would be that it should last for 6 months or more, on the basis that, okay, the PIP may not last 6 months. If their performance doesn't improve, you may dismiss them before that. But if their performance does improve, you don't want it improving for just a month or 6 weeks and then dropping back down again. You want that performance sustained over a period of time. So typically we would suggest 6 months for a PIP. You should set out what the consequences are for not achieving their targets. And as I say, there typically it's written warning, fine, or written warning, and then ultimately dismissal. And also you want to talk about what support you're going to provide them. Maybe they need some training. Do they need some additional supervision or perhaps some resources? Maybe they need a more junior employee to assist them take away some of their lower level administrative burden so that they can concentrate on the things that really matter to you. Set all of that out in the performance improvement plan so that you've got a clear paper trail as to what you've asked the employee to do, what you've agreed to do to support them, and then you can show that you've done everything you reasonably could to support them if things then don't go as as everyone hopes. Now, if they don't achieve the necessary standards, you would then invite them to a formal meeting to discuss the ongoing concerns, give them the opportunity to raise any further mitigating circumstances. But if there are none and there has been no improvement, you would then look at alternatives such as transfer to another role or perhaps a demotion, something like that. But if not, you would be looking at dismissal. You would need to confirm that dismissal in writing with all of the reasons, and then also grant a right of appeal. If they take up their right of appeal, you would hold an appeal hearing, ideally by a different manager to the original dismissing manager. But if that's not possible, you would hear it as impartially as you can, and then you would confirm the outcome of that appeal in writing. And that is how you would look to run a performance improvement plan. And it's also the last of our 5 series of short webinars on incapability dismissals. I hope you found them useful. Please do keep an eye out for our other series on misconduct, on redundancy, on illegality, and on some other substantial reason. And if you have any questions that have arisen out of this session today or any of the other sessions, please do get in touch and we'd be delighted to help you.